It's authorized, but the government hasn't written out the checks for it. So we weren't able to include all the possible savings of groundwater that will be converted to surface water due to the Grand Prairie project, because we don't know if and when it'll ever be funded. So this is taking into consideration only the pieces that are in place right now. Now, part of the next phase of the project, which Ron's going to talk about in a little bit, is to look at what are the issues. Well, one of the big issues is groundwater is being depleted. We're not using it at a sustainable rate right now. So that's one of the issues that the East region will have to get together. We'll have a group of people representing the East region from different factions, the farmers and industry, municipal, get together and say, okay, this is an issue. We already know that. What are we going to do about it? What are we going to be willing to do about it?
Just take note that Northwest Arkansas is also concerned about it. It's not just East Arkansas, because if they're going to be pulling millions of gallons out of the White River, we're not necessarily convinced that that's not going to impact us up here.
I would appreciate it. That's a very good point. You need to send that in to either to Ed Swain, his email address is in all the literature, or post it to the Arkansas Water at cbnsmith.com, I think is the email address. Send that concern in. That's the whole purpose of these meetings, is to get people's concerns, get them recorded, so that when we start looking at what are we going to do in the future, we make sure we get everybody's concerns. We'll review everyone's concerns. We're not going to make everybody happy. That's a given. We can't make everybody happy.
I just think that would be a concern for me, because it's,
But if possible, we would appreciate you sending that in to register that as a concern. Because you're right, the East Basin's not going to worry about what you guys are doing, but you're right, if they start pulling water out of the White River, how is that going to affect you up here?
Right, and it's not a new concern. It's been a concern up here for many times in several meetings we've gone to. So.
Well, if it's been voiced already, then that's a good thing. We'll make sure we get it recorded.
Okay. The next one, and I just went on past basins. Y'all have any other questions on basins or the planning regions? I'm sorry. Well, I mean, I would rather you have questions as it goes through the slide.
Why would you get referring to it as a basin?
For 20 years, I've referred to them as basins, and so now I'm trying to go, no, they're planning areas. Yeah, that's it, planning areas. And, I'm one of the ones that they come to and go, okay, we need to, how much excess water is in this thing and all of this. And I'm trying to help improve on calculations of excess water and just trying to get my head wrapped around the way they're doing it now. But this is the projected counties out to the year 2050. The ones in green are the counties that are going to increase in population. Dark green is the largest increase. Purple are the counties where there's the largest population decreases projected at. I was actually kind of amazed that this area down in here was projected to go in large decline. Some of them are projected to go down as much as 47% of the population. I don't know. If you look at this, a lot of these areas down here are timber. Timber is king in that area. There's not a lot of huge cities down there. Monticello, Magnolia, El Dorado might be one of the biggest spots that's down in there. The largest landowners in the state are in this area, like Potlatch, Plum Creek, and all of them. They own millions of acres of land, and so those areas are projected to go down.
Well, keep in mind also the areas a lot of areas in the dark purple have a low population to start with, so you can lose 100 people, and it's a much larger percentage than if you lose 100 people from Benton County. There's also 3 different population projections that we looked at, and this one's kind of in the middle. They were all over the place.
But it's social economic. people, students had a bearing on that. The Pine Bluff lost 5,000 something population.
Yeah, Jefferson County, down 11%. Anytime I see percentages, I generally start squinting to see what the real numbers is, because Nancy nailed it right there. You know, if you only have 3 people living in the county, and one of them leaves, you've lost 33% of your population. Tell me what the number is, and then you can kind of look at it this way. But I was actually really surprised how many counties were actually losing in population with the state projected to go down. This kind of gets into what you were talking about on the water for irrigation. 16% of this is just surface water, and that's pumping out of creeks, tailwater recovery systems, ponds, and then the vast majority of it is groundwater in the alluvial aquifer. Supplies about 96% of that. The Sparta hits about 12, that's real high quality water, and other ones, Ruby Doo, some of them, they run around 2.6 collectively. This is an area that we can do some very good work in, especially in reuse of water along with these. One of the things that I tried to get going when I first started with the commission was to get a row crop farmer working with a catfish farmer, because catfish farmers, you know, there's about 2,000 to 3,000 pounds per acre of fish. They get what's called brown blood disease, which is excess nitrogen in the water. Plants get cold shock from groundwater, so why not run it through the fish ponds, warm it up, get some really good fertilizer, pump it down through the row crop farms and let them reuse it through that. Great plan, they can share the electric bill too, right? Cold water, more oxygen, less all flavor, all this, and it wouldn't talk long enough to get anything done. So economics might be the driver in this point to where, you know, something happens with groundwater and, you know, we have to get those aquifers fixed, or we could lose them. The alluvial aquifer depth of recharge, these areas in red, folks, that's not a typo. They've dropped 104 to 115 feet. That is a lot of water. The reason you see this kind of weird split, that's College Ridge. It has a huge impediment to groundwater flow.
What was the timeline for that drop?
From the time that this came out of the water use database that we maintain at USGS, and when did they start doing that? Back in the mid-'80s? I'm thinking, if you want to know for sure, call Top Beauty. Yeah, call Top Beauty on that one, and he can tell you that for sure. But the alluvial aquifer,
I don't think that's a change in depth, I think that is the depth that the water is now, in 2012.
I have to check, see, but I thought that was what Todd told me that it changed by. But it may be from the, because this started being getting somewhere, these elevations over here, they, you know, are been getting around 200-foot elevation line. So I think that's actually a change in the groundwater depth. So you can see we got some serious problems right in here. There's some huge cones of the depression right in here. Jonesboro's up in that area. Lone Oak County here is getting over to where a lot of the grass farms are, But again, you can see we've got to do something into these areas, and some of them are doing pretty good, but for the most part, we've lost between 40 to 50 feet storage in there. I don't know if y'all know, but once you pump an aquifer dry and it collapses, you'll never get it back to what it once was. It might not even hold on it again. So this is a big thing that we're looking at, especially when we irrigate most of our row crops on this. Supply availability meetings, presentations on surface water, groundwater quality, fish and wildlife flows. Those are the ones I'm working on. These are the supplies. Review and discuss draft plans. This will be at the library. If you've not been to the Lady Library in Norfolk, it's really pretty nice up there. It'll be the 22nd. You're welcome to come. I want to get rid of it. Regional-based issues and recommendations, if y'all have any for this area, please send them to that CDM Smith email address, edswain@arkansas.gov, or just give us a call. You pick this up, all that information for locating any of us if you're here. Give us a call, send us an email on it if you have to respond. The groups have been very successful so far. The Fish and Wildlife group, the one that I've been working with, has been very interesting on some of their recommendations and you know, how will this be viewed in different things. You know, those fish and wildlife flows typically have not been viewed as all that important. And, you know, Arkansas being the quote natural state, that's not exactly the way we feel about that, or most people don't. They like the fishing, they like the hunting, they like the swimming, they like the canoeing, they like the boating. And they don't like the full bacteria. So that's one of the things that we're really looking hard at. Again, this is the information if you need to contact any of us. This is just an update to get to provide to y'all on the water plan. If you have any more questions, or if you want to see the earlier presentations, you can go to the Arkansas Water Plan .org. No, there's one that's it doesn't have the Arkansas in it. It's on here.
arwaterplan.arkansas.gov is the website.
That is the correct one.
And it's in the blue box at the bottom of the sheet.
And there is one misspelling here. There's an I here. Smith does have an I. So it should be one that you know. Anybody, any questions?
Just sort of a generalized question concern, and I'll certainly send it in my email. That would be, I know you've taken, how much rain you get, all that kind of stuff, based on historical records and that kind of stuff, but yet we have drought.
Yes.
And some droughts that are so severe that it may not be. Has the commission ever done a commission-initiated allocation? Is there a certain water meter that's not voluntary, right?
They can. And you're getting into an area that's really outside of what I'm doing. The commission has the power to do that.
Right, and I've read the regs on that.
Right.
So my question, have it?
No. Not to my knowledge, we have not had to do that. Now, when I bring up swimmable, fishable flows, Game and Fish has a concern. Have you seen Bayou Bark or Bayou Needle this time of year? They're pretty well pumped dry, especially in dry years like you're talking about. So that's what we're concerned with. Even if we do have a minimum flow required in those, they're not all gauged. How do we go about implementing that flow on these users? Good question. We're actually looking at that and trying to figure out how we can do something with that. The commission can allocate. We can in times of emergency. And when they do that, I think they have a hierarchy set up, of who starts getting shut off when.
Right, and that's sort of the base of my question, because, the regs say the commission will look first at human health.
Right.
And then environment, and the last one is industry, they call it wealth production.
Right.
What if a city has a permit to take water from the river, but the amount of water that they're allowed to take includes water that they can sell to an industrial use?
Those industrial users, a lot of times, depending on what they are, can get shut off. The city will have its own conservation plan. Like the first thing most cities will do is car washes, ain't happening. Next thing is lawn sprinklers. That's not happening. So now it gets right down to human consumption is the highest one. Usually the second one is industrial. The industrial becomes the second highest one, human consumption usually that. But that's the local entity that handles that. As far as, this question gets more convoluted if you throw in the fact that it's a navigable stream. Because navigation trumps just about everything. So,
Because it's federal.
because it's federal, it's not state. So then you have a different hierarchy that we start looking at. But yes, there are mechanisms that allow us to do that. We haven't had to do that, and I hope we never do. And, you know, what was it, 2 years ago or a year ago, we had a record rainfall and a record drought in the middle of it? Only in Arkansas, folks. You know, did you have that in the same?
Back in the fifties, federal rationed water here.
Did they?
You couldn't use anything but for human consumption on all your, well, they didn't have any car washes back then. But a lot of that stuff was industrialized, they had to shut down and shut it off, some cut off.
I know it got bad with Perryville, pushing the Bay River.
They would keep that around, that's a food item, Tyson's. But the chicken, they take city human consumption and then agriculture. I mean, that's, you know, like livestock, chickens and stuff like that. They went ahead and operated. Back then, they did. Tyson's wasn't all that big, the Campbell Soup Company was here. But they got water for that. But it was down, boy, there was no water, no yards or anything like that.
Is that part of what caused the dams to be built?
That's before Beaver Lake. They pulled out of White River, West Fork of White River.
West Fork, yeah.
Two little small lakes.
Well, one of the other points to bring up is that Ron talked about us being a water-rich state. We only use, all of these demands are really only about 10% of the total amount of water, rainfall and water that we get every year. The problem is, the water's not where we need it, when we need it. And Mother Nature has a lot to do about that. We can't control her, and, but we need to look at other ways of doing what we can to help us get the water where we need it when we need it.
It's not always easy as just building another lake. East Arkansas, you know, they've been trying to build a lake over there for 20-something years, and, yeah, you build it, it'll be full of sediment and fire. It's just the amount of sediment those creeks pump. You're not going to build a lake there and it not be a marsh in a little time. And if you dig it, well, let's just dig it down. Well, you hit the alluvial aquifer, and if you're over there near St. Francis River, you know, my grandparents used to raise water down. If they needed another well, we just shoved a pipe down the ground, and within 10 foot, we hit water. So the well on top went on. So there's a lot of groundwater there, but the key is it's the alluvial aquifer. So those rivers over there lose a lot of water through the beds, and that's the recharge factor. Yeah,
Where does the protection of the extraordinary waters sit in the water plan?
in the hierarchy of it, those are federal protections based on, you're talking about extraordinary resource waterways, and then they have extraordinary resource waterways, they have wild and scenic waterways. Those are different designations that are given to different streams, and each one of those has its own. None of them go to the point to saying how much flow has to be in it. Most of those are protections against being dammed up and against certain approach control. But none of those are as far as can you regulate how many withdrawals are on a particular stream based on it being an extraordinary resource waterway. No, that's because Arkansas is a riparian state, and if you're a riparian landowner, you have riparian rights. You can use that water on your property as long as you're not selling it. You have the right to use that water on your property.
As long as there's no detriment to upstream or downstream use.
Correct. And Brenda Young had done what you asked and imposed a allocation as, you know, an emergency allocation. So until something like that gets kicked in, you have the right to use it, do it right there, so. Is that it?
Well, I got a question for you. You said you were on the committee that was looking at the wildlife and the aquatic life and the streams and looking at the critical flow. And I've really not heard anything about any of that in any of these presentations that I've been to yet. And so I was wondering when we might see some of what y'all have been talking about and considering, because I've got to imagine, like anything else, you got some different perspectives in the room. And I kind of wonder what your critical issues are there that you try to overcome with different people.
The biggest issue is gauge versus non-gauge. And how do you implement critical flow on Bear Creek? There's no gauge on it. So how do I, you know, right now, we calculate what the excess flow is from it, and you allocate that out. And not saying this is a great method, but it's called the Arkansas method that they do this with. They're looking at the modifying it, and then getting enough time and data into place where we can change that. In other words, they're going to stick with probably the modified Arkansas method, but have enough in it to where we can change it with better science. Matter of fact, I'm going to a conference in 2016 just on that particular thing, because they looked at the tenant method of using it, and I think they still went back. I forget the professor that's from UNA up here that's on, but he's a big driver. Fishing models, game of fish using the models. You may not know this, I'm sure. I sat in there with the sunlight. And what I do is a lot of geomorphology work. So I actually go out and study a lot of the stream stuff. And Nancy and I were just talking about some of this. I'm hammering on them with the recurrence rate, which, you know, what it will come out to be, I'm not sure. We're still working on that particular part. We'll probably come to a compromise on the method, and then we will state in there that this part needs to be looked at. We need this data. We have a lot of data gaps. Really, huge data gaps.
So you think you can make a set of rules for the places you do have gauges for, and another set of rules for the places you don't? You know, and then what scale are y'all looking at? Are you looking at like a 12-digit?
Well, see, that's the question too. And I asked him where does this start and stop at? Because it is a matter of scale, and I'm glad you said that, but most don't get it. It is a matter of scale. How do you do this on a first order mountain stream that only runs after a storm? Okay, well, we don't do that there. Well, what about down in the Delta where a first order stream stands ponded in water all the time? That's where those regional maps, we will probably have something different for each region as far as that's concerned. Now, the gauges, the correlation between gauges as far as we've done them from a tenth of a square mile up to 500 square mile, looking at width to depth, discharge, velocity, particle sizes, all this stuff, we're getting correlations better than 0.98. I thought it was wrong. I've never seen that, especially in the natural world, really. And so we started looking back at this again, and that's what we was talking about was the intervernal level, which is a little higher than the ripple crest. So what I've been trying to talk to them about is, hey, can we come up with something that's between the intervern and the ripple crest as a minimum flow? Because I can find the intervern, I can see it, and I can find the ripple crest. Well, obviously, if it's not flowing over the ripple, it's at a no-flow situation, or it's just interstitial, right? So somewhere in there, can we come up with something? We don't want to get to the intervern level, because that's 0.9 of the mean daily flow. That's too high. You know, most of the time out of the year, you couldn't pump. So we have to find a happy medium that's in there. So it's an area where we need some more research. I know I didn't answer your question.
Oh, no, that's the best explanation I've had yet from anybody. Grant, I hadn't asked the question, but it's always brought up at these meetings. There's a lot of different parts to what y'all are doing, and it's mostly been just real general so far, and so I wanted to ask you since you brought
Yeah,
that up.
and that is, to me, that is the nuts and bolts of this water plant, you know, because that's where I do my work at. You know, folks that run in water plants, they have a different. So, you know, if you have concerns on that or ideas and stuff, or just want to be a part of that, send in a request to these folks and say, hey, I want in on this fish and wildlife flows, and they'll send you the information and different stuff that they're looking at on. And with the problems Arkansas has, we, in our methods that we're using, we're actually ahead of a lot of other states in the way they're doing their methods. So it's not the very best, for sure, but it's not.
But part of the way that we're approaching the water plant is we've developed these working groups.
I'm aware of that.
The water supply working group, the big water supply working group is bringing together the excess surface water, the groundwater, the fish and wildlife flows, the water quality flows, is having a meeting on October 22nd in North Little Rock at the Langland Library. And that will be kind of a culmination of bringing up together all of those groups, what kind of information we have come up with. We present it to the technical working groups first to make sure they buy into the results we're getting, the methods we're using, and then it will be presented to the public.
Okay.
So we want to make sure that everybody that's been involved in the process, and we've got those working groups are in some cases very large, in some cases not so large. But we're taking that input, developing the methods, applying the methods, and then presenting the results to those groups before we go out to the public to make sure that we haven't missed something somewhere. But the public is welcome to come to the water supply group meeting on October 22nd at the Langland Library.
I've got one last question, and I'm done for the day. When we figure all this out, and we presented it to all the public, and we got all the information, and we know sort of what the water plan is gonna be, then we send it off to be approved. What kind of mechanisms are there at that level where it's gone through this process and this input, and somebody looks at it and decides they don't like the way a particular paragraph reads? You know, how easy is it gonna be to manipulate the plan from somebody that's not necessarily been engaged or involved in the entire process? You know, because I think you can develop something really good, and you get down to the end, and then it turns into not so good. And so I was just wondering how that's going to be carried out, basically at the state level, because to me, I mean, I think the state could put more money into a lot of these programs. They could reallocate where they send it. You know, well, you need more stream gauges? Well, all right, we could put some more money into here. And, oh, we've got pollution concerns over here. Well, the state could actually put hard dollars into the pollution reduction program. You know, and there's a lot of good things that can happen, but at the same time, there's a lot of bad things that can happen too. So I'm just wondering.
And those recommendations that you're making there are dead on. Because a lot of the things, we realize that we're not going to be able to get it done by the time this document has to be written. So there will be recommendations that put into that document.